Welcome to Deleted Saves. On this episode, Thief 2, The Metal Age, on PC. With the success of its predecessor, Thief, the team at Looking Glass Studios pushed forward with a sequel. More than just wanting the game to succeed, they needed it to succeed. So did it? Is this game better than the original, or is it more of the same? And why is it every time I hear this title I want to listen to Hammerfall? We'll dive into most of these questions with 2000's Thief 2, The Metal Age. 1 year after his last adventure to be the least willing hero in history, we return to the darkened steps of Garrett, Master Thief, who stalks the steampunk medieval city, looking for anything of value to get rich from. While all of our main players from the last game are still around, the Keepers, the Hammerites, and the Pagans, after the defeat of their god the Trickster, the Pagans are on the back foot. However, this has led to the furthering of the ambitions of the Hammerites and their machine god worship, so much so that a schism has occurred within the church, leading to a new sect of priests calling themselves the Mechanists, who believe in technological progress at all costs, even resurrecting the city's police force to crack down on any crime or anyone who opposes them. The remaining pagans attempt guerrilla war from the shadows, but mostly these mechanists are steamrolling the city and its citizens. Garrett, as you can imagine, cares for none of this, but suddenly cares a whole lot when his normally trusted fence for his goods suddenly betrays him and sells him out to the local sheriff. When Garrett is suddenly rescued by the Keepers, the sect that raised him after one of their own took Garrett in as a boy, the Keepers tell Garrett of the prophecy of a coming Metal Age, which, to be fair, they did warn him about at the end of the first game. Garrett, of course, ignores them, but his old mentor informs him that the very sheriff hunting him has been hired to more than just arrest him, but to kill him instead. Garrett, not one to take a murder-for-hire plot when he is the potential victim lying down, goes to spy on the sheriff. There, he discovers the sheriff is in a meeting with the leader of the Mechanist sect, and this leader is offering him the chance to bring in some local homeless and lowly to be turned into a sort of mask-wearing, rust-gas-breathing, zombie-like plague-bearers who can turn any organic life that breathes in the rust fumes into rust flakes themselves, basically dissolving them. Ew. But his Mechanist high priest has actually been recording this meeting so he can blackmail the sheriff later. Again, we are seeing the early Tarantino-like script writing, full of double crosses and untrustworthy characters. It is beginning to look like the only one we can trust in this whole world is Garrett himself, simply based on his utter neutrality in these matters. But anyway, Garrett steals the recording and is going to try and get the sheriff on his side. But said sheriff has already been murdered, and evidence leads him to a higher-up in the city's newly formed police force. When Garrett again goes to spy on this officer, Garrett is not the confrontational type after all. He sees a wounded pagan teleport in and deliver him a suspicious letter. Garrett dives into the portal and finds himself in the wildlands outside the city, where the pagans still hold sway. And he meets an old frenemy, Victoria, the servant of the Trickster from the last game, but who is now without a leader. But Victoria has a plan to convince Garrett to help take down the Mechanists. Garrett, despite his distrust of Victoria, takes the job and infiltrates the Mechanist stronghold, only to learn that the true leader of the Mechanists is selling these kidnapped homeless with masks on to the richest people in the city. Further, he must try to kidnap another high-ranking Mechanist to make him talk, and Garrett stows away on a submarine to reach this target. We are well outside the bounds of simple Victorian steampunk adventure now, with a fantasy thief well and truly within the realm of niche outside fantasy cranked up to 11. Garrett succeeds and brings the high priest to Victoria, but along the way steals one of the masks the victims of the Grand Priest's scheme are being forced to wear, which is how the organic wasting rust gas has been manufactured, and that this is the plan of the Grand Priest, known as Karis, in an apocalyptic plan to turn the world into machines. Victoria asks Garrett to enter the hermetically sealed Mechanist temple, but he refuses, so she enters it herself and dies in the process, while filling it with organic life instead. This sacrifice shames Garrett into finishing the job himself, and he kills Karis with his own rust gas. But in the end, the Keepers reemerge and tell Garrett that the death of both Victoria and Karis had been prophesized. Garrett decides it is actually time to pay attention to what his old mentor has to say, and the game ends on a cliffhanger for a third title. That is pretty much the plot of Thief 2 in a nutshell. It will take a lot longer to let this play out, of course. And if you are anything like me, you'll be too busy looking for treasure and collectibles, and likely miss huge chunks of the story beats while I avoid mortal guards and machine enemy patrols, while trying to sap and blackjack just about anything I can as submission to buy myself just a little bit more time to explore for goods. But the biggest change to this game from the first is the increased focus on stealth, which is how I remember it, that being far more stealth action than the first game. Thief 2 began its development almost immediately after the first game by Looking Glass Studios, same developers of Thief the Dark Project, as well as dropping the unkillable supernatural enemies in favor of mortal guards you could actually knock out. So already massive improvements. Additionally, the team began to change how Garrett was as a character, moving him from cynical and self-serving to more superhero detective archetype, such as, say, a famed DC Comics character that we all know and a game of whose I have reviewed before. But Thief 2 still relies heavily on sound cues in the environment and shadows to tell if Garrett is safe and can move without being noticed. So this is not a game you put on podcast and play as you need to pay attention. But in the year until the game's release, Looking Glass Studios was in real, genuine trouble. They needed Thief 2 to succeed financially, to the point that publisher Eidos Interactive, the folks behind Tomb Raider and tons of other successful franchises, including a few I actually like, was writing checks that basically disappeared into the black yawning void that Thief 2 was becoming. Eidos warned Looking Glass to release the game on their window, or there would be quote-unquote dire consequences in the last several months of the game, which was spent in extreme crunch mode until its release. As I said, Thief 2 needed to succeed for Looking Glass to survive. So did it. Look, I'll give you a hint. When was the last time you saw a game created by Looking Glass Studios? Thief 2 actually sold very well and was received with glowing praise from all the PC review magazines and articles of the day, and still sits at an 87 out of 100 on Metacritic. It has improved in every way. But holy shit, did Looking Glass fuck up at this stage. They failed to secure getting royalties from the sales on Thief 2 for months, which caused them to run out of money. With Eidos no longer willing to foot the bill despite the good sales and great reviews, Looking Glass canceled the plans for Thief 2 Gold and Thief 3 and closed its doors. Eidos bought the Thief franchise from them and went on to publish Thief 3, now called Thief Deadly Shadows, to not much fanfare. I did not play that game, and to be honest, I never shall, having no interest in the franchise. Ain't that a kick in the ass? Honestly, I'm okay with this. Thief and Thief 2 were wonderful time capsules of the late 1990s, as they anti-FPS in their way. No aggression, no endless walls and thundering guns, just the quiet and dark, a guard to knock out and take the keys from so you could open a trunk and steal gold and jewels. Yet still, a save-the-world plot is told, even through an, if anything, aggressively independent man who really, really could not care less unless there is coin in it for him. If that does not speak of the true archetype of the fantasy thief, then I honestly do not know what does. Garrett himself is the right man for the job as well. He's not Doom Guy, nor is he B.J. Blazkowicz. He's not the typical hyper-masculine, one-liner spouting, brain-damaged linebacker type, sporting more firearms than an NRA meeting, like so many of the supposed American archetypes that many of us glom onto, whether consciously out of fear of the other, or fear of failing to achieve this, or subconsciously, because they are just so fucking cool, and wouldn't it be neat if we could all be that guy, needed to be in the gaming landscape. No, Garrett is the other type. The snide, the sarcastic glass cannon, who is the perfect in every movement and covered in plot armor. The edgelord, as it was called. Draped in black and simply being that cool and intense, and that adventure just follows in their wake. So yeah, I guess that was more the type of figure I found compelling in those days. The quiet type that draws the ladies just by being witty and equipping and intense. Not something I personally could ever, even on my very best day possible, have ever achieved. Oh well, we can dream, I suppose. And that was the point of the exercise, wasn't it? To have another dream to model an impossible me after, I guess. But like so many sequels to games, it was probably best if it had been left at 2. It wasn't, and the decay was palpable. But again, the vagaries of capitalism and the desire for more money kept these sequels coming, despite the original creators, fans, and times having moved on. I know I have said Thief was a time capsule, but really, it is the star of the show, Garrett. He was that time capsule, and one that should never truly be unsealed to disappointment, just peeked at now and then, patting the earth where he and the Thief franchise is buried, in the hope that one day he and his world will come back around again. Dishonored got close. And here, at the end of the story, is where we stop our tour of one of the pillars of the stealth genre. We have reached our own Middle Age, a rust-breathing relic found partially hidden away on a digital download site for routine sale prices. It is worth seeing and playing. Again, even if only for a little while, to cast your fortunes and try your hand at utter silence before your attention is drawn away to something louder and shinier with more action. Go ahead and let your attention be drawn. Garrett will wait. He'll always be there, quiet and intense and in the shadows of the mind, where he will live long on after the code has been lost and the world falls away. There will always be a thief. Thank you for listening. Deleted Saves would like to thank Brad for being a patron of the show. If you would like to become a patron of the show, please go to patreon.com and check out Deleted Saves podcast. All donations go directly towards maintaining the show itself. Thank you.